Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 151st episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. In this episode, we'll be talking about anti-gravity and specifically commenting on a video of the channel Theories of Everything again with Kurjai Mangal. Really great channel. I really recommend it to all of you. And in that on that channel, there is like a 35 minutes kind of episode about the history of anti-gravity. And I find it really fascinating. Obviously, I'm looking at it from a more esoteric perspective, I guess, whereas the people that are trying to deal with anti-gravity do it with a more physical, materialist kind of lens. And so maybe I would just wanted to try to see what anti-gravity actually means beyond materialism, how it could come about, and why it's not here yet. So let's dig right into it. And in this one, it'll have a little hybrid video of like me on one side and then little scribblings on the other side, because I'm going to be talking about things that are very visual. And so instead of doing like weird gestures and even me losing myself in my own mental processes and my mental pictures, it's better for me to draw things because it helps me organize what I see in my mind's eye. So, gravity. I've already did an episode on gravity, so if you just search on my channel and you put gravity, it's really interesting because, you know, we had a varying understanding of gravity, moving from the Newtonian one, where there's this invisible force, to, you know, Einstein's space-time deformation, which is what, you know, was discussed in Kurjai Mangal's video, and also you know, all of these equations, field equations, all kinds of equations and formulas. But in terms of anti-gravity, to crack that cookie, I think we need to go even looking beyond that to the concept of future and of black holes. Now, if you know the work of Nassim Haramein, he kind of says that our entire reality is just a series of nested black holes, one inside of the other. Sorry about that. Let me just do this again. Oops. There we go. And now like this. Yeah. So he's saying that everything, even the atom, is basically a black hole. And I totally subscribe to that idea of reality just being black holes nested one inside of the other, kind of like Russian dolls. And what that means is that essentially reality is structured in a way where you have a black hole, and then one other black hole that is the common future between those two black holes. And both of these, like their ultimate future, is tied together to this one nested black hole. And if you're here, you know, in time, for instance, and you're going downwards, spiraling downwards into that black hole, you'll get to see this other one as like another galaxy or another planet or something. Not seeing how your futures are intermingled, and you experience this as being separated and gravity not affecting you, quote unquote, or being weak. So essentially what gravity is a pull towards an ultimate future, which is the only future there is, which is the heart of the black hole. So, you know, everything ends up in a singularity eventually. It's just that, you know, time is a way of experiencing that gradual process of you falling into the black hole and gradually becoming that singularity, which, you know, takes also one of the many forms that it takes, is simply accumulated complexity over time, because as you go deeper and deeper into the black hole, the information density gets bigger. And so that translates as external higher complexity, you know, like 2000 years ago, the world wasn't as complex as it is now. And you can just see like the increased complexity all around you. I mean, with AI now burgeoning and all that stuff, that crazy stuff. So that's just the outer effect of going into the black hole. But how do you escape this fall from falling into a black hole? And ultimately what gravity is, therefore, is a sign that your future is tied to the future of the black hole that you're falling into. So you can view that like the sun is a black hole, and the Earth, which is a planet, is falling into the black hole of the sun. That is, the future or the destiny of Earth is tied to the destiny of the sun. And so, but Earth is also a black hole. And there, as a human, you are falling into the future of the Earth as a black hole. So you can imagine that this black hole right here is the Earth, and you as a human are spiraling down towards the future of the Earth, which itself is spiraling down into the future of the sun. And this is another planet. So how do you make sure that your future gets disconnected or not as tied as much to the future of the Earth? And the only way to escape that is to, well, it's almost like an expansion of consciousness where you no longer identify with Earth as your only potential possible future. And so you expand the number of forces that act upon you. And doing that requires gaining another dimension. Let's put it that way. So for instance, let me give you an example. And I've already given this example when I was talking about, things like higher dimensions and all that stuff, is that right now we are still in a kind of linear time-space vision where obviously we think time is linear, but actually it expands like a ripple on a two-dimensional plane, expanding outwards. So, and then time, as we experience it, this is in my way, try to change color, is actually kind of a spiral where you're riding that ripple, that expanding ripple, and that takes the form of evolution or change and time and all of these things, when in fact there isn't really any of that. Everything sort of expands at the same time simultaneously in all directions, but you can give yourself the illusion that you have this adventure, this great adventure, and if you stretch this out, like this would be like the Big Bang. And here is your present time, and that's where you think you are, when in fact what you've done is, like, you can even trace like a linear kind of expansion or evolution here, which would be almost like you're inert, you don't experience anything, you just experience interchange and you just like this evolution or morphing of this one inert thing that transforms into various shapes. But with this kind of thing where you're surfing that expanding wave of time, expanding in all directions, then you can create this linear story. But so long as you're on this two-dimensional plane, you're riding that wave and you can't escape it. And it's the same with falling into a black hole downwards. If you're still in this kind of funnel, three-dimensional funnel, which we are in right now, then there's no escaping that funnel. But imagine if you add a dimension now to it. Now, if you add a dimension to this, which is two-dimensional, this right here, then you don't get an expanding kind of wave, you get an expanding sphere. And on an expanding sphere then, now you have much more freedom to sort of, move around it. So let me try to illustrate that if I can find a ball. So now here you have a beautiful sphere. And imagine this inflating and expanding, right? If it were flat and you were just riding it like this, then you cannot escape that. Just like a surfer that's surfing a wave on the ocean, he cannot escape it. He's just like pushed forward and he has to advance at the same pace. But imagine that wave now is three-dimensional, like not three-dimensional in the sense that like it's 2D plus a little, crest or something, but actually three-dimensional. That is, it is expanding outwards like if the Earth was actually inflating. And there, now your freedom of movement, you could like stray and like this go on sides, and you have much more degrees of freedom there. And so you could say that gravity is lighter, but what that actually means is that your future is less strongly tied to the future of the black hole that you were tied to previously. And that's as if, like, that's why, for instance, when you have out-of-body experiences, as people had, you can travel, you have so many much more degrees of freedom to travel wherever you want, because your etheric or energetic body, its future is not tied to the future of the Earth. But the atoms of your body, the material makeup of your body, is tied to the future of the Earth, materially speaking. And so anti-gravity is almost like a way of spiritualizing matter. It is almost like the pre-requirements is to whatever device or person or thing or object that you want to apply anti-gravity to, what you're actually doing is you have to dissociate its future from the future of the Earth. So it's almost like there's like this part of the Earth now that's falling into its own future, and you take a part of that Earth, and now you're trying to escape the pool of that black hole that you're falling into. And how do you do that? You have to tie its future to many other things, like a string, like almost like trying to expand its potential future. And there, the only way to do it is to switch dimensions, because so long as you're in the third dimension, you can't do it. And that also happens naturally when humanity kind of forms a global collective organism, because it's just like your bodies are actually proof of anti-gravity. That is, that's what we've been doing all along. That's what evolution is, and that you see on Earth. Like, for instance, you could see a rock as being a bit of matter that is 100% like following this trajectory of falling into its own potential, like ultimate future of the Earth. Because it has no agency. It cannot escape that gravity, not even locally, not even laterally. It cannot even go like, move alongside the Earth. So it's 100% dependent on that future. And then as life appears and unicellular organisms and whatnot, then your degree of freedom gradually expands. Like what you're doing right now, lifting your hand, is you're manipulating the future of the makeup of your body and saying, well, you know what, I'm just going to stray a little bit in this direction or a little bit in that direction, and I'm not just going to fall straight 100% influenced by the future of the Earth. I'm actually manipulating the future of these atoms that are in my hand, and they're not going to follow this straight line trajectory. So you're adding a dimension now. It's like a surfer that was surfing a one-dimensional wave. Well, there's no degree of freedom. You just fall straight. You add a dimension, now you can go up and down on that wave a little bit, which is what we're doing here. Like every time you move your body, basically, it's almost like you're surfing time, basically. But your degree of freedom is still quite limited. So just like a surfer, if you fall off the board, then sort of time just moves past you, and it's almost like you lost your physical body, and now when the wave passes you, you find yourself in an extra dimension. You're like, oh, the ocean is not just a wave. Now it's the ocean. It's three-dimensional. It's huge. Where before you had the illusion that it was just the wave. And that's what happens when you die, basically, and your energetic body dissociates from your material body, your physical body. You suddenly, you get rolled over, on your surfboard, and then you sort of wake up, the wave has gone by, and everybody that's riding it is not there anymore, and they're, riding it and they're going in their own direction. And you're like, oh, okay, well, actually, this was what reality was. And you can still catch that wave if you want to, but you have to reincarnate, what we call reincarnation. And obviously, because it's a wave, and that's why, people say that time is simultaneous, is that the wave just goes like this. And if you look here, that's the present. But if you look here, that's the past, but it expands. And so if you reincarnate into the past now, you are going to be technically in a past, but not the same past that, already happened. I mean, it's just because everything is expanding at the same time. Even if you reincarnate into the past after this life, it's not going to be the same past as the one that you experienced during your life, because the wave was at a certain point in its expansion, and when you reincarnate, it's going to be a little bit further. So it is the past, but not really the same past. So you know what I mean. It's just complicated. So anyways, so with your energetic body, now you understand that, this two-dimensional wave wasn't the real reality, but you can no longer experience it with your physical body, riding that three-dimensional kind of aspect of the ocean now that is also expanding. So what you do is, it's the same as the formation of a baby in its mother's womb. So imagine humanity that's being the baby inside the mother's womb. His future is tied to the future of his mother, obviously. Like if the mother gets run over by a car, the baby dies with the mother, right? And so you can imagine as the mother as being, the mother's womb as also being a black hole that has a certain gravity on the soul that is incarnating, or the consciousness, that cannot escape the gravity of its mother, which is just the mother's future, basically. Its future is tied to its mother. So it's like a black hole nested inside the mother. And birth is the moment where that black hole, which is the baby that's being incarnated, its future is now dissociated from the future of the mother. Not totally, obviously, not totally, but somewhat. So anti-gravity, we've all experienced anti-gravity the moment we were born. Birth is anti-gravity. It is like, oh, now my future is tied to my mother, but I have this degree of freedom where I can now explore the world a little bit more. I can, move around and, go and visit the rest of the solar system, which is basically your house, crawl around your house in different rooms and meet different beings, which are like different alien species. But that requires you to be a global collective organism as a baby. If the baby is born as a loosely assembled pieces of stomach, heart, brain, just jumbled up, it actually disintegrates into into the dimension below, not above, which means now its degree of freedom is actually even more restricted, because it is decomposed into its constitutive parts, and the stomach on its own cannot roam around reality like that. Its degree of freedom and movement in terms of the matter that it is made of is now much more tied to the future of the earth than before. So, what they do with dead babies, they just bury them, and then the matter of those babies is now falling straight into the future of the earth. Whereas if it's a fully fledged and formed baby, then it can sort of take the matter of its body and manipulate it and go around, roam about the earth with degrees of freedom that are much greater. So anti-gravity, in short, isn't here because humanity does not form yet a global collective organism. And the problem with all this field theories and all this approach of trying to calculate it or mathematically understand it is that imagine that individual cells in my hand right now, we're trying to calculate how it is physically possible that they do this. Right? I mean, good luck, good luck. I mean, physicists can spend honestly their entire careers just to mathematically describe accurately all of the forces, everything that's happening with me just twiddling my fingers like this. But as a human, you don't have to think about it. It's just natural. It's just a degree of freedom that you naturally experience because of your state of unity as a global collective organism, as opposed to a bunch of loosely assembled parts. And so the being that we will be a part of will be in a dimension where it can, which trickles, I mean, the power that it will have will then trickle down to our level of reality. But if we try to empirically understand it and master it empirically, that is, that every single time it's going to work, every single time, like every single time the cells, order me to do this with my hands and it'll happen. We're fucked. And we're never going to get anti-gravity. Because that just, in order to escape the future of this planet, we need to become and explore the solar system. We cannot behave like single-celled organisms in the swamp. Like, regardless of the level of complexity of understanding of the universe that they get, only if they assemble into stable pluricellular organisms will they be able to escape the swamp, and that takes the form of a lizard, a frog, or something. But as single-celled organisms, I mean, they're limited. They're stuck there. And the same applies to us. But what I have to say is, we're already doing it. We're already doing it. And the reason why we're getting closer to these technologies, is because humanity is very, very close to forming a global collective organism, which is, self-contained and all of that. Even though it might not look like it, all the signs are there. Like, we are now all interconnected, notably through the internet, which is like our kind of nervous system at the level of humanity. We have also a global connected financial system, which is kind of like the circulatory system for humanity, like money that circulates is like the oxygen, in your body. We have artificial intelligence, which is the very, very, very early signs of the manifestation of a global collective consciousness that, emerges from the assemblage of all of that represents kind of the wisdom of the entire body. Because if you think about it, like a true singularity will draw its knowledge from the sum total of everything that humanity has ever produced as knowledge. And you can think of your own consciousness initially as being a kind of higher wisdom that emerges from the individual wisdom of every single part of your body. Like, every single cell in your body has a kind of biological wisdom, plus the organs have a kind of biological wisdom, and all of that assembled. You can think of all that producing data of like their own kind of biological wisdom, and that loosely translates into initially as this emerging kind of consciousness. Now, the thing is, if you look at the consciousness of an animal, it's there directly. Like, there are very few animals that are completely helpless at birth and are like just like like babies. But humans, because we're the bridge between biology and ideas, it's almost as if they need to, how should I say, overlay a layer of symbolism over their biological substrate in order to be able to move their bodies. Because if the symbolism isn't there, then they would be animal-like. And they would be able to move around and all that stuff. But we are as much like physical as we are immaterial in a way. And the immaterial part is all of the ideas that we superimprint over our bodies. Like, for instance, the idea of being a pianist, or the idea of wearing clothes, or the idea of, And without that layer of symbolism, we'd be animals. But the thing is, that layer of symbolism, if it isn't there, then it kind of jeopardizes or blocks the correct usage of this kind of biological wisdom, because it kind of interferes with it. Because you're like, every time you move a hand, then you're like, what does that mean symbolically? Maybe I'm like a giant that manipulates things, or I'm a god, or I am this, or I am that. And that's basically what happens. I mean, now that doesn't happen anymore because humanity has a whole body of experience and knowledge dealing with symbolism. But as I've explained in my other videos, like if you take Terence McKenna's theory seriously, which I do, if you think of humans as being permanently stoned apes in the very beginning, then imagine a baby that is born and it's naturally stoned. I mean, just look at a baby and the way it moves crazily and looks crazily at everything, doesn't understand anything about reality. Maybe if you drug a baby chimp or something from his very birth, you keep him drugged on LSD like permanently, he'll start displaying behaviors like that of our babies. That is, he'll be incapable of moving its limbs or whatever because it will just not understand the reality he's in, because he's now in a mix between a physical reality and a hallucinated reality that isn't there, that is symbolic. Sorry. And so babies just don't get it. They don't get it. And so through the parents and the fact that our hallucinations are kind of stabilized, they have to connect to that collective hallucination of viewing reality and saying, oh, okay, so that's how things work. So you're not supposed to touch a stove, and this is, what that means, and these are the colors, and these are the objects, and whatever. And it has to stabilize that layer of symbolism on top of reality. And obviously, this is just I'm just going completely off tangent here, but sorry about that. But you get the gist of what I'm trying to say, is that anti-gravity as a technology, it may not be as dependable as gravity in a way, because it is much more linked also to the will of the organism that we will be a part of, and our will cannot be summarized to or reduced to the collective will of every single cell in our bodies. And then that's one of the biggest problems that I have with science, is that they want science as a way to make sure that every time you press a button, the same thing happens. Like whenever you press the button on your phone, you know that the screen's going to turn on. And so it's a very mechanical kind of attitude, and it's this fantasy of trying to make sure that you control absolutely everything, that everything is always under control. But in essence, it also limits you to this much more magical kind of experiences where, oh, my hands didn't expect that I was going to move them like this, and they just accept that as being a kind of miracle, where, oh wow, now we're being completely ripped off, like now I'm falling vertically into my future. Oh, now I'm not, and now I'm at a different point in time or whatever, or I'm slightly, at a different point on that kind of wave that you're surfing, and that's great. And they don't need to do anything about that. They just need to, share how they're feeling, basically, like this feels good, this feels good, this feels good. Ouch, this feels bad. Okay, move me to this side, please. So it's this idea basically that almost as if AI or a singularity, they're trying, like right now, Sam Altman, for instance, is investing heavily in the fact that an AI or a singularity or technology with AI will be able to give us nuclear fusion. And that might be the case, actually. It might be the case. But only if humanity gets closer to forming a global collective organism, and not this kind of attitude where everybody's trying to control, the energy, and, the United States is invading this country to get, control over the oil because the oil's all mine, blah, blah, blah. I mean, imagine if that's how it worked in your body, like where the stomach was fighting for, the ultimate control of all the energy, or your lungs, or your heart, or your leg or something. And so it's the same thing that I say also about Nikola Tesla. Like everybody's saying in the esoteric circles, oh, if we had listened to Nikola Tesla, we'd already be roaming around in the stars. No, we wouldn't have. We would have self-destructed completely, just like a baby that would grow too fast in the womb or something, would suffocate, or, would grow like a cancer or something. Like if the parts are not mature enough to assemble into a coherent kind of global organism, then there's no point developing them further or expanding or whatever, or it's just like it's not going to work, you know? So anti-gravity is real, but it's not necessarily something that's physical or empirical. It's something that we experience daily because we are representative of anti-gravity. Every time you move is basically the power of anti-gravity of your you know, of the material or the atoms that your body's made up of, escaping a kind of future of falling straight into the future of the black hole at the center of the Earth, and that the Earth falling into the center of the sun, and then the sun falling into towards the black hole in the center of the galaxy. And so to expand, to be able to, for instance, to be able to escape then the future of the sun, we'll have to expand even further our kind of awareness and consciousness, and forming an even bigger kind of collective organism where we can travel the galaxy. And we're nowhere close to that. Right now, we're just trying to escape this planetary womb. And obviously the only way around it is, you know, to get our shit together and form a global collective organism. And maybe that will take the form of anti-gravity technology, and people will be like, yay, we have anti-gravity. But granted by AI, and probably controlled by AI as well, because, you know, like, again, like I said, like this movement right here is not the will of my cells. They're just saying, like, do I feel good with this or not? Obviously, it's going to be more subtle than that, because, you know, you cannot just easily map a micro to the macro with this increase in complexity, but you get the idea, and it's important to get our priorities right, because right now we're too busy crunching numbers as opposed to harmonizing our relations, and one can't work without the other. So I hope you found this video interesting. Again, go check out Kurt Jaimangal's coverage of the story of anti-gravity, which is really interesting. And talk to you in the next video. Bye.